Hey guys, welcome back to Rudder Innovations, where today we're going to be doing the fiberglass and gel coat on our boat. Here we go. Whenever you're cutting fiberglass cloth, you're going to make a mess. If possible, I'd recommend doing this outdoors and not inside a shed or garage. After finishing the boat, there were a ton of small pieces of fiberglass everywhere, which was virtually impossible to clean up. I used 1708 fiberglass cloth from Fiberglass Warehouse for the floor, which is woven on one side and chop strand mat or CSM on the back. Fiberglass Warehouse carries a variety of different widths, but I chose the 50th width for my application because it seemed to fit the space the best and minimize waste. I took my cut piece of cloth, laid it in the boat, and then cut it to size, leaving about 2 inches curling up on the sides of the boat.
All right, this is kind of a pain in the butt to cut. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this out and make another one so that I'll have one for my second layer. That way I don't have to do this again. All right, so I have my second layer of fabric cut for the front, and you can see I'll let it overlap about 2 inches. And then I'll come in with the back and I'll meet up here and then go towards the back. I'm going to be using a 3/8 inch nap roller that's lint-free from Sherwin-Williams. It's a contractor pack. And I'm also going to be using a ribbed roller like this to get any bubbles out. So we'll go ahead and start that process now.
When you're applying the resin to the cloth, your main goal should be to get the resin out on the cloth as quickly as possible. Don't get stuck trying to saturate one area of the cloth until it's fully saturated. It takes time for the resin to permeate the cloth, so roll it out and keep going. Then, whenever you wet your brush or roller again, you can re-wet any spots that haven't been fully saturated. Work one section at a time, and once the cloth has been completely saturated, come back with your ribbed roller to get out any air bubbles. By using a roller to apply the resin, you reduce the amount of air bubbles because the roller pushes air out of the cloth as you roll, naturally minimizing your time with the ribbed roller. After each cloth was finished, I waited until it was completely dry before moving to the next piece. All right, y'all, we got our first layer of fiberglass here on the front, underneath the front seats. And now we're going to be doing 2 different layers of glass that's going to come right over the center line about here, and then we're going to have from this side coming out to about here. So it's going to overlap one another. We're going to let it roll over the back side there. This I'm going to let it hang down just like a drip edge so it doesn't roll back underneath the plywood. And there's 2 cavities here where the gas tank is and where the batteries sit. And I'm eventually going to just put a coat of gel coat on whenever I do the floors. We have the cloth rolled. It's a 50 inches, which landed us really about here. I cut it back here, and then I did the same thing with the other side. And that is because in the next step, it's going to overlap, and it'll be a little bit more to cover up that ridge and spread it out just a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel this back. I'm gonna do this side first. I'm gonna let it set, and then once it's kicked off and everything's good, we'll come back and we'll do this side. I'm gonna try and roll this side up.
See all these wrinkles here and bumps? If you spend your time smoothing these things out as you roll the fabric out, it saves you a lot of time and a headache of popping bubbles with that ribbed roller. Not to say you shouldn't use it, but this helps get a lot of the air out to begin with. And when you're using that ISO resin, it's still kind of tacky, which is nice because it allows the fiberglass to stay in place once you're smoothing it out.
One of the biggest mistakes that I made during this project was purchasing a roller from the dollar store, thinking I could dispose of it after one use, but it immediately snapped in half on the first roll, which made for an incredibly stressful scramble for another roller. After that was completely dry, I installed the next piece on the other side. It was extremely hot when I installed the fiberglass, so I mixed it at a 1% ratio of catalyst to resin, which gave me about 20 minutes to work with it until it started to kick off and become more like a gel. The trick to maximizing your time with resin is not to let it sit in the bucket, because as it cures, it gets hotter, and the hotter it gets, the faster it cures. I only mixed up 1 liter at a time, and as soon as I mixed in the catalyst for about a minute, I spread out the surface area by putting it in my roller pan or directly onto the cloth. We have 2 layers on the front here, so all we have left is the back. So let's get to it, and I'm going to explain on this back side one of the difficulties that we had. It folds down here into this cavity where the gas tank sits. After doing the floor, I realized that the cloth wasn't adhered that good, so thankfully we have these little doors, access panels to get it down. I was able to use a 4-inch brush there, and then the same thing for this. It was really tight. It was even tighter because we had a couple battery containers in here, so I have moved those out so it's easier to access that and get the floor adhered. After installing the first layer of fiberglass to the floor, there were little individual pieces of fiberglass that were sticking up in a few areas, so I used a piece of sandpaper by hand to knock them down and then wiped everything down again before my second and final layer of fiberglass.
Alright, so it might be hard to tell. This is the front of the boat. You can see that we have 3 layers here. The first layer of fiberglass from the front, this second layer from this side coming over here, and then this top or second layer from the front comes here. So we have this little lip right here, and it's really not bad at all. But what we're going to do is we're going to end this fabric right here where it'll be nice and flush, and you won't have any lip at all right here. And then we're just going to come with that compound, and we'll sand this, and we'll put a little bit here, and it'll be nice and flat.
After cutting the fiberglass cloth to length, I rolled on my resin with my lint-free roller, went over the entire surface with my rib roller to pop any air bubbles, and then went to the back of the boat with my 4-inch brush to make sure the cloth was properly saturated and adhered by the batteries and gas tank. Here you can see the white portions of cloth from the first layer that I couldn't saturate. I'm not really sure what happened here. Maybe the cloth got wet from my sweat, or maybe it was a defect in the material, but I could not get this portion to saturate. That being said, it is what it is at this point. The second layer of cloth should provide enough structural integrity to where it doesn't matter, but it was a little disappointing. If you're doing a project like this, I would invest in some cheap knee pads, because more than likely they're going to get ruined. Also, if you notice, I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt the majority of the time, and that's because I did this in the peak of summer. I'm a clean painter, so I did a good job not getting resin all over me, but know whatever clothes you wear are most likely going to get ruined as well. After getting my final layer of fiberglass installed, I sanded down where they overlap with 20 grit sandpaper, vacuumed, and wiped down everything with acetone to prepare for fairing with my structural putty. There is a fairing compound that would be easier to sand without bits of fiberglass in it, but I was trying to minimize my waste and use the products I already ordered. Fiberglass Warehouse said it was appropriate to use it in this fashion, so I just figured I'd go ahead and do it. Once everything was dry, I sanded it smooth to prep for my gel coat. I've sanded all this structural putty down. It's all floated out nice. And now what we're going to do is we're going to roll on our first layer gel coat, which is going to still be like the polyester resin or laminating resin, where it remains tacky. And then we'll add something called surface seal on the final coat to make it kind of a hard shell that's waterproof. All right, we have our white gel coat from Fiberglass Warehouse and our 3/8" nap lint-free roller from Sherwin-Williams. By using painter's tape on a new roller, you can remove any loose lint or even blow it off with an air compressor, because even though it states it's lint-free, it still can have lint. I grabbed some extra 2-liter mixing cups from Home Depot, so we'll mix our gel coat 1 liter at a time, which is 1,000 milliliters. So if we're using a 1% catalyst ratio, I'm going to put 10 milliliters of catalyst per 1,000 milliliters of gel coat. To my surprise, the gel coat was way thinner than the resin, similar to paint, and it took 2 coats before it was completely white. Whenever you're applying the resin or gel coat, make sure you have a plan to easily exit the boat and finish covering wherever you were last standing. I did my first coat, waited for everything to dry, and then proceeded to put on a second coat. After finishing the second coat, I decided to test out a few texture choices with a product containing silica sand before implementing it on the actual boat. A ½ ounce of sand to 2 ounces of resin was the lowest ratio I tested, which felt great on feet but was still a little rough to kneel on. There are so many different options for a non-skid surface, such as texture sprays, paints, EVA foam, and carpet. I decided to just leave my final coat without any additional texture other than what the 1708 cloth provided, and to my surprise, it worked pretty well. That being said, the wakeboard and ice chest did tend to slide around the first few times we went out on it, so we're going to install carpet back in this boat because it makes the most sense for our application. This is the product called Surface Seal from Fiberglass Warehouse, which is a wax additive you add to your final coat when using isotooling polyester resin or gel coat. Resins with wax create a tack-free surface and must be sanded in the event you decide to do more layers. 1 ounce is needed per quart of resin or gel coat, so we'll be mixing 946 milliliters of gel coat at 1%, so 9.46 milliliters of catalyst, with 1 ounce or 29.57 milliliters of surface seal. All right, we got it complete. It is dry now. Feels like a hard shell on here. After the final coat, you could still see ridges of 1708 cloth, so if you want a smoother finish, I'd recommend using chopstree and mat to help blend where two pieces of cloth meet up and a fairing compound over the entire floor. I was more concerned with the functional aspect of the floor than how it looked, and since we're going to be covering it with carpet in the future, aesthetics really didn't matter to me. All right, guys, join us next time where we'll be installing the seat, console, carpet, and side skirting. Hope this video was helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. If you liked it, like it. If you're watching on a medium, you can subscribe. Feel free to subscribe. We'll see you next time. Peace and God bless.